Okay, bass fishing fanatics, we're back at it again. And this one today I didn't really want to do yet, but I've had several requests to do it on Instagram and via Messenger on Facebook. So we're going to do it. And today's topic, chatterbaits. Sorry, bladed jigs, vibrating jigs. I'm not allowed to call them chatterbaits. Actually, that might be over by now. I think that patent's run out. Before we start, shout out to Sleazy and Colin. Thank you for your comments on the swim jigs video. Appreciate it. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Amazingly, this is another one of those baits that we can use our 7-foot medium heavy rod for. No changes required. Just like the previous video, depending which video you're watching, of course. 7-foot medium heavy and a 6.3 to 1 to 7.2 to 1 bait casting reel is going to get it done. Spinning reel 5.5 to 1, as we know. We're off to the races. It's the perfect rod for it. It's got some backbone, got a little bit of tip, got a little bit of moderate give in the midsection, everything we need. If this technique is something that you want to focus on and you want to specialize in, you may consider getting something slightly more moderate in the midsection, say a 7-foot medium heavy moderate, but it is not absolutely necessary, not at all. So let's dive in. It is a lure that I am proud to say, before all the hype about chatterbaits, and I'm going to say it now, came out way back in the day, and I'm talking way back in the day. I'll try and find a picture of the original one. I got one of the original chatterbaits, one of the OGs with the weird hooks on them and all that kind of stuff. I got one and I tried it, and I sucked big time. Sucked at fishing it, and put it away and didn't touch it again for probably 5 years, until one weekend, and I was fishing a tournament and I'd started catching fish on a swim jig, and then that bite died, and I transitioned over to a spinnerbait, and they didn't want to eat that. It was too much, and I was digging around in the bottom of the tackle compartment on my boat, and I saw these two chatterbaits lying there. Ugly things. And they were a bit old by then, and the skirts were a bit knackered, and slammed a little trailer on there, fired it out, and all of a sudden I was getting bit. And it was very much a situational thing, and a lot of the time with a chatterbait that is the case. Didn't win the tournament, sadly, but managed to catch a lot of fish and a lot of nice fish. Fast forward a few years, and Z-Man started refining their chatterbait, bladed jig, vibrating jig, whatever you want to call it, and I became interested in them again and started concentrating a little bit more heavily on them. Bought myself a few of them, learned how to fish them properly, learned the right types of trailers that were available to us in South Africa at the time, and started catching some good fish on them. Nice big fish. So much so that I decided that I would make my own ones. As you know, I have my own bait company, that's no secret. So I started messing around with a few molds until I found the mold that worked for me. Made my own proprietary wire forms that work within the mold once I'd adjusted it and altered it the way I wanted it. And then I made a completely different mold, or altered a completely different mold. So I had two different types of heads, and that was that. And ever since then I've been fishing bladed jigs, vibrating jigs, chatterbaits pretty much every time I go fishing. So that's a very long story to tell you that it is a bait worth having in your tackle box. It is not a difficult bait to fish, as we'll talk about in the retrieves just now. And they just catch fish. So what is a chatterbait? Well, I suppose that depends on how you fish it. If you fish it in the normal cast and wind style, it's absolutely some kind of a bait fish. Without a doubt. It's definitely a reaction bait. It gets fish to react to it. If the water is staying to dirty, let's say, when the water is staying to clear, it's definitely they are hunting that thing down to try and kill it. You would obviously have to adjust, if you were fishing it as a bait fish pattern, the colors of the bait to suit whatever bait fish are prevalent in your particular body of water. And that, guys, that pretty much, I know we say that on every video about every different type of bait, but that's just because it's fact. And if any of you are interested in how you go about doing that, go right back to the beginning of the channel, go onto the playlists on the channel and look for bass biology. And look at some of those videos, and it'll explain why I say what I do about matching the hatch. Although that's a very much overused term, it is a very true term when it comes to a lot of different baits in bass fishing. Righto. Let's get into the nitty-gritties of this thing. So, bladed jigs, chatterbaits, whatever you want to call them. This is my particular one. I'm just going to show you the components of it. So let's have a look here. Good hook. The way I make my bladed jigs with Gamakatsu or mustard hooks. This is more of a kind of a lightweight one that I've made to do some experiments with. So it's a lighter hook on it. It's maybe like a 2x. I normally have like a 3x hook. Bait keeper. Somewhere for the skirt to tie onto head. I'm not going to get into technical stuff, but with a bladed jig or chatterbait, whatever you want to call it, you want the weight underslung. So you want the weight below the level of the hook, like that. That's what causes, it's a whole thing about fluid dynamics, but that's what causes it to vibrate when the blade is pulling it through the water. So you want the weight below the level of the hook shank. And then obviously that's where the blade gets attached to. Blade style of your choice. This is the one that caused all the nonsense. That's the original blade shape. This is one that I like to use as well. It's more commercially available to us as bait makers. It's called a bubbler blade. Got holes in it, makes bubbles. Yes, it does make bubbles. There's a clip on there. That's where you tie your line to. And then the split ring that goes onto the bait. So, let's look at a couple of colors which you might want to consider, or which you should probably have in your tackle box most of the time when you're trying to learn how to fish a bladed jig. So my number one pick always is green pumpkin. Always green pumpkin. Doesn't really matter what type of bait it is. Second one, black and blue. Third one, some type of white or pearl. You do need to have some other type of reaction color if you're dealing with dirtier water. Black and blue doesn't always get it done. So you might be a fan of white and chartreuse, plain white, as opposed to a kind of a see-through pearl color, or something that's come up reasonably for stained water. There's this guy here. I believe that was used pretty extensively in the Bassmasters Classic not so long ago, so it's probably worth having a go. Little pinky. And then obviously, because we're trying to mimic a bait fish, some or other type of bait fish presentation for the body of water that you fish in. Most of the places I fish when I go to America have got bluegill in them, so I like to make bluegill ones. So that's my bluegill one. So we've spoken about rods and reels. Let's talk a little bit about line. Everything that we've discussed so far about our 7-foot medium heavy rod applies. So keep it simple. For normal bladed jig, chatterbait, whatever you want to call them, fishing. For the spinning rod, stick with your 20 to 30 pound braid, 15 pound fluorocarbon leader. If the cover is really gnarly, then go to 17 pound. And for the bait casting setup, 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon is going to get it done. If it's really, really thick, straight braid. Same applies for both rods. Just go to the straight braid. If the water's dirty and the stuff that you're fishing around is really thick, just go to straight braid. It's as simple as that. There's nothing complicated about the setup for this bait, guys. It's straightforward stuff. I have some trailers that I can show you. I could have showed you for putting on these guys. And instead of doing that, I'm just going to put them up on the screen. It's a lot easier. There's a lot of new baits that have come out that I haven't had access to yet. So I'm just going to put them up on the screen for you to have a look at a few different examples. You guys know how to put the trailers on lures by now. We've done it on just about every lead bait that we've done. So I'll just put them up and you can see what my recommendations are for trailers. Okay, good. So where do we fish chatterbaits? Well, as usual, we head to our handy dandy map for that answer. Let's get this sexy little blue guy to hold down the page. Bluegill guy. Right on. Okay. Generally speaking, chatterbait is a shallower water bait. So let's call it from 0 to 12 foot. If you wanted to, you could get bigger ones, 1/2 ounce and bigger, and fish deeper water. There's better baits for doing that. A lot crankbaits and things like that for doing that. But you can do it if you want to. If you wanted to fish offshore on a ledge or say something like that, you could probably find a 3/4 ounce or a 1 ounce chatterbait to help you do that. However, I will say this, guys, because of the way that chatterbait blades and the body of the bait are designed, the minute you start to wind this thing, it will start lifting in the water column. And yes, you can mitigate that by slowing your retrieve down, but only so much. And then it will rise. So let's say 0 to 12 foot, like we've discussed. And it's kind of all the usual suspects. The difference with the chatterbait is they don't really like to come through heavy cover. So thick weeds. If the weed is more scattered, you're away. So as we always say on our handy dandy map, these green areas here are shallow water. Today we're going to say that these yellow dots here represent emergent vegetation, and these yellow dots here represent some boulders. As we know, these are the docks. All of this area here is fishable. Riprap is fishable. Boulders are fishable. Scattered timber is fishable. Scattered bushes is fishable. As long as you don't throw the chatterbait into the bushes, you'll be fine. You can see mostly they have an exposed hook. Not good for anything that's going to be able to get hooked on it. Plus the bait is moving all the time from side to, it rolls from side to side. The chance it's going to hook up on thick vegetation or branches or stuff like that is about 100%. It is going to upset you. You're going to have a bad day. So although it's not an open water bait, it requires more open water to fish it. One of the best places to fish bladed jigs is down weed lines. So let's say, for argument's sake, that where this green meets the blue here, this is the end of a weed line where it tapers away into deep water. This would be a brilliant area to throw a chatterbait. It's like a wall of weed. You're bringing it along the wall of weed. If there's scattered patches of weed in these shallow areas here, like we've said, between the patches of weed, to bring the bait, maybe just clip an outside edge of the weed and just rip it out and then carry on winding. Shallower areas of road beds, shallower areas of sunken creeks, riprap banks, stump fields. If there's not a lot of branches in the stump field and it's shallower than, say, 12 foot, boat ramps, boat docks, anything like that is an area where you could go and fish a chatterbait. as I have said previously in a couple of videos, guys, if you know that there are baitfish in your lake, and you know where those baitfish live and what they are, there is a bait that you can select when you are shopping to closely match the colors on that baitfish and go and fish that bait in the areas where those baitfish live. There's a very, very strong chance that the bass are going to live there too. What about time of year? Well, it's another one of those things again. The best success I have had with a chatterbait, because it's a moving bait of quite an aggressive moving bait, has been from the early spring to kind of the middle to late fall, when fish are chasing food or trying to kill things that are around their beds or whatever the case is. I personally have not had a lot of success with chatterbaits in super cold water or after cold fronts. I have spoken to a couple of guys that have done well with them after cold fronts. That has certainly not been the case for me. So let's say that it is a bait that is good to be used in water that is warming and then starting to taper off going into the later part of the fall. If you use it inside those parameters, you should be fine. I'm not saying that you, like I said, that you won't get them other times of year. You possibly will if you fish it enough and you fish it hard enough and you've got the patience to do that. But that is the time of year I suggest you fish it in. What about weather? My best success that I have had with chatterbaits with regard to weather is usually when there is a little ripple on the water from the wind. When it's flat calm, or even when there's a lot of ripple on the water from the wind, when it's flat calm, for whatever reason, the bite doesn't seem to be as good. I think it may be because the baitfish move more when the water is unsettled. In my mind, that's how I work it out. But I have not had a lot of success with bladed jigs in water that is not moving in some way or another. The other factor that comes into play with that is the water color. In very clear water, I have found that if I go with a natural baitfish color, say like this bluegill color here, or a more see-through color, say like this is my kind of ghost pearl, for want of a better expression. Those are the type of colors that work better in clear water. The minute the water is slightly stained to almost dirty, it seems to make them bite the bladed jig more. And I think that is also got to do with the movement of baitfish. In dirtier water, the black and blue guy is going to get it done, or a plain white will get it done. They don't seem to shine when the water is chocolate milk. And we all know what that looks like. I don't need to explain that to you. I know guys that have caught fish, and I myself have caught a couple of fish in chocolate milk type water, but they are not optimal. There's other things that you could use in place of a bladed jig. Water temperature we've discussed with seasonal and things like that. A lot of the time when you've got inflows, had heavy rains and stuff into a lake, where you've got inflows that are dirtying up the water in the early part of the year, that will not be optimal, obviously, because that inflowing cold, dirty water is never good for bass fishing. I've never met anyone that said, oh, I had the best day of fishing, we had cold, dirty water. Rising water, yes. In the summertime, absolutely. But early on and late in the season, when the rain is cold, it's never a good thing. So let's talk about the retrieve. What about the retrieve? In my experience, and there may well be different techniques that I haven't discovered yet, but there's only a couple of retrieves that really work. A lot of that is based on the size or the weight of the bladed jig that you decide to use. So for a general bait fish type retrieve, you would fire it out and just a nice steady wind. And what I like to do is every now and then I just pop the rod tip and carry on winding. Pop, and what that does is it causes the skirt to flare, maybe the bladed jig to jink from side to side or change direction suddenly, and get a reaction from any fish that might be close to the bait. But a steady wind down some or other type of structure or cover will get it done most of the time. Another way that you can do it, and I've experimented a little bit with this, I have not done it a lot, is if you decide to have some type of craw patterned bladed jig, and you need to be pretty sure that the bottom is not foul. In other words, there's not a lot of bushes, thick bushes like this, or thick weed. Although they do come through weed fairly well, they will get fouled. So maybe around harder bottoms, clays, gravels, boulders, that type of stuff, is that you fire the bladed jig out, let it get down to the bottom, maybe choose some kind of a craw or a crab color, brown, green pumpkin brown, black brown amber, something like that, with a matching craw type trailer. Let it sink all the way down to the bottom, engage the reel, give it a nice slow sweep just to start it vibrating, because that's what it does, and then just a nice solid wind, and try and keep that bait as close to the bottom as possible. Now, there's a lot of brands of bladed jigs, chatterbaits out there now that the bans have been lifted, whatever that means. So you want to look for something in the half-ounce range, depending what depth you're fishing. But if you use a half-ounce bladed jig, it's going to keep you close to the bottom where you need to be. There are bladed jigs that have weed guards. There's some on the market, which you could try if you wanted to fish it around thicker cover. I personally have made a few and tried them, and I don't like them. I feel that it's a hindrance to the hook, because you've already got a trailer in place, and now you've got this weed guard with this moving bait going through structure. It's not for me. It may well be for you, but it is absolutely not for me. What about the bite? I would say with the bladed jig, there's probably two types of bites that I've experienced. The majority of the time, it's savage. They just hit it, turn and go. It's a very and then turn and off they go. There's nothing gentle about it, guys. They want to kill the bait. And the second one, and it's pretty much the same for every type of skirted bait that we've spoken about after a cold front or in colder water, where they may come up and meet the bait. As the bait is sinking down, before you've even engaged to start winding, you've got that trailer on there just kicking like this, and they just come up and meet it and turn. And before you've even taken up the slack to start winding, that fish is going already. So you may not even feel it, may just go weightless in your hand. So what you would do then, if you were about to start winding and it went all weightless on you and funny, just take a couple of winds, take up the slack, just lift your rod tip like this, and if you feel any weight, hammer it, and hammer it hard. Most chatterbaits have got nice big hooks on them. You put the steel to them a little bit, especially if you're using a big trailer. What to look for when we go out and we buy chatterbaits? Well, I showed you at the very beginning of the video what the components are that make up a good chatterbait. There's not very many bad ones on the market anymore. Most of the bad ones have probably been weeded out by now. So, good stout hook, or good sharp stout hook, good bait keeper, something to hold that trailer in place. Whatever the blade shape of your preference is, as we showed earlier. Good hardware, split rings, and the snap that's attached onto the blade itself, that guy there. And you sort it. There's so many good brands of them. If you had to only pick one brand that you were doing your shopping, pick the original. So one or other of the several hundred, it seems, iterations of the Z-Man chatterbaits, it's going to get the job done for you. They invented the thing after all. They know they perfected it, guys, you know what I'm saying? But they invented it. Jackhammer, I mean, come on. In this particular case, believe the hype, it is that good. It truly is a good bait. I don't have one here with me now. It's that good. It's an investment, but it's that good. I hope this has answered some of your questions, guys. This is a wonderful bait to go out and fish with. A lot of fun. It's a moving bait. You move it all the time. You can fish it most of the year or different periods of the year. It catches big fish. What more could you ask from a bass bait? Thanks for joining us. See you next time. We're out.